The crack of his fist against my daughter's jaw sounded like a gunshot on Christmas morning. Sarah's head snapped sideways. Her body crumpled against the wall, and our family's laughter died in an instant. But what froze my blood wasn't just Derek's violence. It was his brother Marcus, sitting across the table with a wine glass in his hand, leaning back with a cold smile and saying, "Finally, someone had to teach her to shut up." In that moment, as my daughter's hand trembled against her bleeding lip and my wife gasped in horror, I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I had only one number to dial, a number I hadn't called in 15 years. Derek had no idea what he'd just set in motion. My name is Robert Mitchell. I'm 67 years old, and I spent 30 years as an insurance investigator before I retired to what I thought would be peaceful golden years in Portland. I'd seen staged accidents, fraudulent claims, elaborate schemes. Nothing prepared me for watching my own son-in-law put his hands on my daughter during what should have been a joyful Christmas dinner. Sarah is my only child. She married Derek Thompson 3 years ago, and I never liked him. Something in his eyes never matched his smile. My wife Margaret told me I was overprotective. Maybe she was right, but a father's instinct is powerful, and mine had been screaming warnings since the day they met. The dinner had been Margaret's idea, the whole family together, Sarah and Derek, his brother Marcus and Marcus's wife Jennifer, my sister and her husband. All morning I'd noticed things. The way Sarah flinched when Derek raised his hand to adjust his collar, the long sleeves in a room warmed by the fireplace, the 3 trips to the bathroom before we'd even sat down. We were halfway through dinner when Sarah made an innocent comment about the payment on Derek's new truck. I saw his jaw clench, his knuckles go white around his fork. He stood. "You want to talk about money? You who haven't worked a real day since we got married." Sarah looked down. "Derek, I didn't mean..." "Shut your mouth." He moved toward her chair. I started to rise, but Margaret grabbed my arm. "Robert, don't make a scene." Then he grabbed Sarah by the hair, yanked her to her feet, and hit her not a slap, a closed fist that sent her sprawling into the wall, knocking over a shelf of Margaret's Christmas decorations. The room exploded, my sister screamed, Jennifer jumped from her chair, and Marcus just sat there with that sick smile. Finally, someone had to teach her to shut up. I didn't plan. I dialed a number I'd kept for 15 years and swore I'd never use again. Jack Morrison, former FBI, now a private investigator who handled cases no one else would touch. We'd worked a massive fraud case together back in 2008, and he'd told me if I ever needed anything to call. "Mitchell, that you? I need you at my house. Now. Bring whoever you trust." "What's happening?" I looked at Derek standing over Sarah as she cowered against the wall, blood dripping onto her white sweater, and at Marcus, calm as ever. "Domestic violence in progress, and Jack, I think there's more to this. On my way, keep everyone there." Derek's face went red. "Who did you call, old man?" "Someone who's going to have a very interesting conversation with you." I moved to Sarah's side and helped her up. She was shaking. "It's okay, honey," Derek laughed, a harsh sound. "This is between me and my wife. This is my business. The moment you put your hands on her in my house, you made it mine." Marcus stood then, bigger than Derek through the shoulders. "Mr. Mitchell, I think you're overreacting. Sometimes things get heated." I looked at him, the expensive watch, the custom suit worn to a family dinner, the authority in his posture that didn't match his supposed job selling cars. Something clicked in the investigator's part of my brain. "How long has this been going on?" I asked Sarah quietly. "Dad, please, how long?" "A year," she whispered. "Maybe longer." My heart shattered. A year of excuses about being clumsy, about walking into doors, about falling downstairs, and I'd believed every one of them. Derek pulled out his phone. "Yeah, it's me. We have a problem. The old man's making noise. Get over here now." He hung up and smiled at me. "You want to make this complicated, Mr. Mitchell? Fine. Let's make it complicated." 20 minutes later, Jack Morrison arrived, not alone. 2 former law enforcement associates and a domestic violence advocate came with him, badges out, walking through my front door like they owned it. Derek paled. "Who the hell are you?" "Jack Morrison, private investigator, here on behalf of Mr. Mitchell." Jack's eyes swept the room, the broken decorations, Sarah's swelling face, the defensive postures. "Anyone want to tell me what happened here?" "This is a private residence," Marcus said. "You have no authority." "I was invited by the homeowner." That gives me every right to be here. Jack turned to Sarah. Ma'am, are you all right? She looked at me, then at Derek, then back at Jack, and I watched her choose truth over fear. He hit me. My husband hit me. Jack nodded, pulled out a recorder, and told everyone to stay put. Officers were already on the way. He turned to Marcus, advising your brother not to say another word without a lawyer. Then to me, you said you thought there was more. 30 years of investigators' instinct, I said. The money, the behavior, the way these two move together. I want to know what they're really into. Jack's eyes sharpened, and he made a quiet call, running background checks, pulling strings from decades in law enforcement. The police arrived 10 minutes later, separated us, took statements. A female officer documented Sarah's injuries, photographing the bruising already blooming across her jaw. Derek, on his brother's advice, said nothing. 30 minutes after that, a man in an expensive suit walked in carrying a briefcase. Richard Chen, attorney for Derek Thompson. My client will not be making further statements. Jack raised an eyebrow. That was fast. Almost like you were on standby. Chen didn't answer, but I saw the flicker in his eyes. This wasn't his first time cleaning up Derek's messes. Police arrested Derek on assault charges. As they led him past Sarah, he hissed, "You're going to regret this," and an officer immediately added witness intimidation to the charges. Marcus tried to leave, but Jack blocked him. I'd stick around, I've got questions. Am I being detained? Not yet. The night's young, later. Alone with Jack in my study while Margaret helped Sarah pack a bag upstairs, because there was no way my daughter was going back to that house. I laid out everything I'd noticed over 3 years. Derek doesn't work regular hours. Expensive tastes his sales job shouldn't cover. Sarah once mentioned he helped people with insurance claims. Jack, I know fraud when I smell it. And if Derek's running something, Marcus is in it too. Did you see that watch? $50,000 on a car salesman's income. Jack pulled out his laptop. Let me make some calls. I've got a friend in insurance fraud. If they're dirty, there'll be whispers. Upstairs, I found Sarah on her childhood bed, holding an old teddy bear, looking 12 years old again. Dad, I'm so sorry. Honey, you have nothing to be sorry for. I should have left the first time. I stopped counting how many times there were. Rage burned through my chest, but I kept my voice gentle. Tell me everything. And she did. How charming he'd been at first, how the first time he grabbed her arm too hard he'd cried and apologized. How it escalated slowly from a shove to a slap to words that cut deeper than any blow. He said no one would believe me, that his family had connections, that he'd make me look crazy. And Marcus was always there backing him up, telling me I was too sensitive. He never hurt me himself. He just watched. Somehow that was worse. Then she said something that changed everything. There's more. Derek and Marcus had late-night meetings in our basement, men I'd never met. Derek told me to stay upstairs. Once I was on the stairs and heard them talking about someone's accident, about how a claim went through, about splitting money, about making sure the injuries looked real this time. My blood ran cold. Organized fraud. Downstairs, Jack was on his third call, his face grim when he hung up. Your instincts were dead on. Insurance frauds had their eye on a ring operating in Portland for 2 years. Staged accidents. False claims, billing for treatment that never happened. Derek and Marcus Thompson are at the top of their list. How much money? Conservative estimate, north of $2 million, could be more. Derek hadn't just been an abusive husband. He'd been a criminal protecting an operation, and I'd bet everything that Sarah's isolation and fear were by design. Because if she ever felt safe enough to talk, it could bring the whole thing down. I need to make a call, Jack said. We're going to need the FBI. Over the next 3 hours, my house became a command center. FBI agents, fraud investigators, the district attorney's office. Sarah recounted every detail of the basement meetings, the men, the papers with claim numbers and dollar amounts. By midnight, they had enough for warrants, not just Derek's arrest for assault, but a full investigation into fraud, conspiracy, and racketeering. They raided Derek and Sarah's house and seized computers, files, burner phones. Marcus, brought in for questioning without Derek there to intimidate him, watched his own wife Jennifer start talking. She'd been scared too, scared of what would happen if she said anything. Especially after seeing how Derek treated Sarah. The investigation exploded. 50 fraudulent claims, over $3 million, a network of corrupt doctors, complicit attorneys, and investigators who wrote false reports, with Derek and Marcus running the whole thing. But the case went from big to massive when investigators found they hadn't only filed false paperwork. They had staged real accidents, recruiting desperate people to get genuinely hurt in car crashes and falls, paying them a fraction of the payout. In 2 cases, it had gone wrong. One man was permanently paralyzed. A woman had died. I had to sit down when they told me. My daughter had been married to a man running an enterprise that had gotten someone killed. Sarah took it even harder. I lived with him. I slept next to him. I didn't know he was capable of that. You couldn't have known, Margaret told her. He made sure of it. The district attorney came to the house personally. Your testimony is going to be crucial. Can you do that? Sarah looked at me. I took her hand. It's your choice, honey. She was quiet a long moment, then nodded. Yes, if I don't, he'll do this to someone else. I can't live with that. The trial took 8 months to prepare. Sarah moved back in with us, started therapy, joined a support group. Slowly, she began to heal. Derek and Marcus were held without bail as flight risks. Richard Chen was arrested too, after investigators found he'd been laundering money through fake legal settlements. Dozens of arrests followed across Oregon and Washington. I watched Sarah grow stronger every day. The frightened woman who'd come home that Christmas was gone, replaced by someone fierce. When she walked into the courthouse on the first day of trial, she held her head high. The prosecution built its case with financial records, wiretaps, testimony from recruited accident victims, medical evidence. Then Sarah took the stand for 6 hours over 2 days. The abuse, the fear, the basement meetings, Derek's threats, Marcus's cold silence. The night at Christmas dinner, when one phone call changed everything. Derek's attorney tried to rattle her, suggesting she was a scorned wife seeking revenge. Sarah looked him in the eye. I have the medical records from every time he hit me. I have photographs my therapist helped me take of bruises I hid for years. I have my family's testimony. The only thing I'm seeking is justice for everyone my husband hurt, including myself. The jury deliberated less than 3 hours, guilty on all counts. Derek was sentenced to 25 years federal for fraud, conspiracy, and racketeering, plus 10 more on state charges for assault and domestic violence. Marcus got 20 years. Others in the organization received 5 to 15. Civil suits followed, insurance companies and victims recovering what they could. Derek and Marcus lost everything: houses, cars, every asset seized to pay restitution. A year after that Christmas dinner, Sarah and I sat on my back porch watching the sunset. She'd become a victim advocate, helping other survivors navigate the legal system, finding purpose in her pain. Dad, she said quietly, I never thanked you properly for making that call. For believing me, for not giving up. Honey, I failed you for a year by not seeing what was happening. That call was the least I could do. You didn't fail me. You saved me when it mattered most. You didn't hesitate. You acted. We sat in comfortable silence. Then she told me about a letter she'd gotten from one of the women Derek and Marcus had recruited for their scheme, thanking her, saying that because Sarah testified. She'd found the courage to report the people who'd manipulated her. She was getting her life back. It made me realize something, Sarah said. That Christmas dinner when everything fell apart, that was the beginning of a lot of people getting their lives back. Not just me. I thought of Jack Morrison, who'd answered without question. Of the agents who worked the case tirelessly, the prosecutor who fought for justice, Margaret and my sister standing by Sarah when she needed it most. It wasn't just one phone call, I said. It was everyone who answered it, everyone who believed you, Sarah nodded. Still, you made the call. That took courage. I squeezed her shoulder. Truth is, I wasn't thinking about courage. I was thinking about my little girl, the one who used to sit on my shoulders at the park, who trusted me to keep her safe. I'd let her down once by not seeing it. I wasn't going to let her down again. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky orange and gold. Somewhere in a federal prison, Derek Thompson was living with the consequences of his choices. Somewhere in the city, other survivors were finding their voices, refusing to stay silent. And on my back porch, my daughter was free, healing, strong. That one phone call hadn't fixed everything. It hadn't erased the pain or the trauma. But it had been the first step on a long road to justice, And sometimes that's all it takes. One person willing to make the call, one person refusing to look away. One person saying, "No more." I'm Robert Mitchell. I'm 67 years old. And that Christmas dinner when I watched my son-in-law hit my daughter while her brother-in-law smiled, I made a choice. I chose action over silence. I chose my daughter's safety over keeping the peace. I chose justice. And I'd make that same choice again in a heartbeat because that's what fathers do. That's what decent people do. When you see someone hurting someone you love, you don't turn away, you act.